What is up, my friends and family? Welcome back to another episode of Tea with Carly. I am so excited about today's episode because I have a question that I was asked by one of my students in the academy that we are going to go over today. We're going to dive in and dig deep, and I chose a whole podcast to respond to this question because it is something that every few years or so I get asked as an English teacher, and I have a lot to say on this. So we're going to go over that today. By the time that you get this, it'll only be like 2 days later after I'm recording this. So I always push my students' questions up to the top. Even if I have things prepared or whatever, I always make sure that you guys are a priority. So I already have my recordings planned for the month of November and some part of December, but I wanted to stop what I was doing and talk about this question and put it out as soon as possible so that my student can have a response, but also because it's a very good question. So stay tuned. We're going to talk a lot about, I know you probably saw in the title, about English tests and do they even matter? Honestly, I have a lot to say about this. So let me start by giving you the actual question that I was asked by my student. I'm going to read it verbatim. So my student says, "Teacher, please, I want to ask you, why do we even know and memorize advanced words or adjectives, but when we speak, we forget all of these advanced words and we use just simple or normal words? For example, I know the adverbs and adjectives like ecstatic, and I know the meanings, but when I speak, I would say simple words like happy." And then he goes on to say, "On the IELTS exam, I try to use advanced words or adjectives in order to increase the score, but I struggle." His mind goes blank, and he just wants to know if it's only him. He's asking in a group of 868 other people in our academy, in one of our courses that we have there. And he's asking, please, is this only me? Well, first of all, it is not only you. I have had multiple people throughout my career as an English teacher, which is the better part of my life, tell me the same thing. Like, hey, I spend hours and hours on end studying all these advanced English language terms or words and vocabulary. And then when I go to talk, I forget it all and I just use the simple kindergarten words. And I have so much to say about this because it is a question, yes, but it also is something that I think cannot be answered in just one statement. So his question was like, how can I fix this? Basically. How can I fix this? Well, it's not that simple. I'm pretty sure every teacher out there might have their own responses to this question, but in my experience, I have 3 reasons why it happens, and then I have maybe a few tips on how you could quote unquote fix it, but we'll get to that at the end. But my first reason as to why this actually happens, you're studying for the TOEFL or the TOEIC or the IELTS or whatever English test that you have in your country. You're learning all this vocabulary, but then when you go to use it, your mind goes blank. Well, my first theory or reason is because ESL learners adapt to speaking like the people around them. All right, let that sink in. I'm going to read it back one more time. ESL learners adapt to speaking like the people around them. So if you are around a lot of people who speak very casually, you will also speak casually. If you are around a lot of people who speak very formal, you will also speak very formal. It's just normal. It happened to me as well when I was learning Korean. When I would surround myself with my Korean friends, I would speak so casually. And then when I would go to my Korean classes, my professors would be like, "Where did you even learn this? This is not correct." It's because I would learn slang and things like that. Or it would be correct, but they're like, plenty of other words you could use here. Why did you choose that? And it's because I would surround myself with people at that time who were 19, 20, 21 years old because I myself had just turned 20 years old. So I would surround myself with people who constantly spoke casually. So I would end up speaking like them. So when you surround yourself with others who speak casually or simple, as my student put it, it makes it so that you will speak that way as well. The way to overcome this is simply just to practice. You're going to need to practice. You need to break through that barrier. However, and this is important, and I'm a big advocate for this, you should not think that speaking simple is a bad thing. Speaking simple is not a bad thing. Speaking simple is actually extremely native, in my opinion. You go out on the street and you ask any native English speaker what 5 of the words on your vocabulary list that you're studying for the IELTS or the TOEFL or TOEIC, ask them what they mean, and they probably won't be able to tell you the definition for all 5 of those. These exams are designed somehow, some way, to make you learn half of the English dictionary. It is insane. But when you go out in real life, you're not going to need to know half of the English dictionary. You literally are just going to need to know the basics. And that's what we like to communicate in as well. As a native English speaker, I don't like to use formal wording when I'm talking to anyone. If I have a meeting with the president of the United States, or I don't know, the king of some random country, and maybe I want to know a few more formal words. But even when I'm in business meetings and stuff, I know how to use the formal words. I know how to speak formally, and I do use them periodically, but it's not something that I focus on because I focus on clarity. I want to make sure everybody in the room understands what I'm saying. And I do know that there are people of various educational backgrounds, or just people of various ages in the room, where I need to kind of read the room and see what vocabulary I need to use. So a lot of times speaking simple isn't a bad thing, but people think, oh, like I have such a wide and diverse vocabulary, but I automatically opt into speaking simple. Like, why do I do that? Well, let me tell you this. I have English degrees, plural, and I have been teaching English for the majority of my life, over 15 years. And I still resort to speaking simple, quote unquote. I keep on saying simple. That is because how my student worded it. And I really liked how he worded it because, yeah, speaking simple is basically it. Yeah, he hit the nail on the head with that one. You know, when you know a bunch of vocabulary words and you can use plenty and you don't, you speak simple, you know? And I just want to say that most of us do not go out of our way to use fancy adjectives or adverbs or whatever. Most of us, meaning native English speakers, we don't go out of our way to use it. Yes, you will have to study all these super long, super hard, super annoying vocabulary words to pass these tests, like the TOEFL or TOEIC, the IELTS. And there's like a million other tests in other countries, just basically English tests. But in the real life, when you speak English like a native, you don't need to know half of those. So yes, I know you're like, hey, I don't need to know them, but I want to know them. So I'm not saying don't study them. I'm just saying that one of my theories as to why you choose not to use them in the moment is because you don't hear them being used in the moment by other native English speakers or even fellow classmates. You don't hear them being used because it's not necessarily that common. We don't really like to use fancy words, and we don't expect others to use fancy words. You know, it's not an everyday thing. I think maybe if you go to like speeches or conventions or sometimes on the news, you might hear some fancy wording or formal wording, but in day-to-day lives, we don't speak like that. So I think you're going to have to really practice using those quote unquote fancy or formal vocabulary words or adjectives, adverbs that you were mentioning in order to overcome this. My second reason or theory is it could be your confidence. And I know confidence is hard to come by, and we may even think that we are confident, but subconsciously we are still quiet, scared, and nervous to try or use new words. We push confidence so much as a native English speaker who is also an English teacher. I always tell my students, like, just get out there and be confident. Even if it's like complete nonsense coming out of your mouth, you better look confident speaking that complete nonsense. You know, just try, because we sometimes don't understand how much confidence or a lack of confidence can propel us forward or hold us back. So if you have confidence, you can be propelled forward extremely. And this is in every aspect of your life. I'm just talking about English here, but if you're confident in anything else, anything that you do, not only will other people look at you differently, like, wow, look at them, but also you can trick your own mind into believing that you can do pretty much anything. So confidence really is key. And I know we say that a lot, but it's true. But sometimes it's really hard to come by. It's really hard to build yourself up and to believe that you are confident. So subconsciously, you might still be scared or you might still be nervous to try these new words. So in the moment, you resort back to just what's comfortable or what you know for sure 1000% is correct. So the example my student gave is like, yo, I know the word ecstatic, but I always use happy instead. I could say like, oh, I'm so ecstatic to be here, but I always say like, I'm happy to be here. It's because you know the word happy. It's a simple word that everybody knows. And you know that if you were to say, I'm happy to be here, everybody will understand and that it is 1000% without a doubt correct. But taking the word ecstatic and using it in this situation is a risk. It's something that you're like overthinking maybe. You're like, I'm confident that ecstatic also can be used in place of happy, but I'm not confident enough to use it because maybe there's a possibility that I might be, wrong. You're like double guessing yourself. And yeah, you're confident in your English abilities, but you're confident in your English abilities on a lower level. You're still learning all these new words. You're still, studying a lot. So when it comes to putting them into practice, you get nervous because it's a new territory for you. The other English words you've been learning your whole life. I mean, people in almost every country know what the word happy means. It's literally happy birthday, happy Valentine's Day, happy this, happy that. We use it all the time. People see it all the time. They know what happy means. But when you try to use a synonym or you try to use a different word in place of it, that's when you're like, I'm not sure. You second guess yourself. So it's a confidence thing. And notice like in all this, I'm saying we. I'm not saying you, I'm not saying whoever, I'm saying we. And that's because, again, it happens to even us as native English speakers too. So don't beat yourself up about it. Like I said before, personally, I have an English degree. I've taught English most of my life, and I have learned so many vocabulary words, endless ways to say things, and so on and so forth. However, even I, Teacher Carley, am guilty to resorting back to quote unquote simple vocabulary because in the moment I subconsciously lack the confidence to use that bigger word. It happens to me all the time. Now, when I was younger, when I was literally in college, when I was learning this stuff every day, reading so many books, I was an English major, so I had 7 books that I would have to read in a week. And I'm not even over exaggerating because I took 6 classes a semester and I had so many books I would have to read just to get my English degree because I was like, I want to teach English. But no, I was learning so much vocabulary from reading and also from just like day-to-day life and everything, writing papers, wanting to sound more professional, wanting to sound more educated. And I was using them in my everyday life because I was at college. I was in an environment where it was normal to use bigger vocabulary words or it was normal to speak more educated. But I'm a mom now with 2 little kids. I use the word potty almost every day. I don't use toilet or I don't use the word restroom or lavatory. Like I don't use all these other words. I use potty, because I speak with little kids. And also for a long time I was a teacher to children as well. Like now I teach adults, but I was a teacher for children as well. So I used their vocabulary. The environment you are in directly influences the words that you choose more than you can ever know. And I know I'm going backwards to the first point I made, and I'm supposed to be talking about confidence right now, but it all ties in. Like, trust me, everything that I'm talking about today all ties in. It's one big thing. Even though I said I have 3 points, I do, but it's all linked. So I'm guilty of it too. I know that I could say many different things, many different ways, but I choose the most simple way because I want clarity more so than anything else. I want to be clear. I don't want to have to repeat myself. I don't want to have to second guess like, oh, was that correct? Did I do that right? Is that the right word? I just want to be clear. So that's another reason why confidence, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is the correct word here. Even me, yes, I know. I'm admitting my flaws here, but ask any English teacher out there if they know every word in the English dictionary. They will say no. And if they say yes, they are lying. There is no way. There's so many words in English. There's no way that one person knows how to use every word correctly. sorry to break it to you, you do not know how to do that either in your own language. It's almost impossible. We are not robots. We are not AI yet. And so we cannot do that. The first one was you have to realize that you adapt to speaking like the people that you surround yourself with. And then also, second reason why this may happen to you, why you may choose to use simpler vocabulary, even though you know for a fact that you can use more difficult or formal vocabulary. Confidence. You're not confident that you're using it correctly. And the third one, and this is a really hard pill to swallow, but it needs to be said. A lot of the words on these English tests are words that are hardly ever used in everyday vocabulary. Literally. Like, I'm telling you, I have taught TOEFL vocabulary classes before. When I was in Korea, I taught a course where I would help my students study for the TOEFL. And even I was looking at these vocabulary words and thinking, what the actual heck is this? I never would ever use these vocabulary words. Why do they need to know these words? These words, literally, they're never going to use ever again, anytime in their entire life. You're not scientists, you're not doctors. There's no reason why you need to know such elaborate vocabulary. That's why I'm such a big advocate on teaching people how to speak English like an actual native. It's so different. You're never going to speak like a native if you always have your nose in a vocabulary book, in a textbook. That's not how we speak. You can learn so much vocabulary and you might be able to get perfect scores on any vocabulary test you take. Heck, you could probably beat native English speakers on a vocabulary test 1000%. I know. I have taken the TOEFL myself, the practice ones, just with my students, and my students have gotten better scores than me because the vocabulary there is something that I would never use or never even dream of using in a million years. You're listening to this and you're probably like, why am I wasting my life? Unfortunately, a lot of times you have to take these tests just to get that little certification or whatever you need for your resume or for your class courses or whatever. So you need this, but I'm just saying, don't get so overworked about the fact that, hey, I'm forgetting these vocabulary words so quickly. Honestly, these kind of tests, in my opinion, are designed to stress you out and to make you think that you know everything you need to know in English. But in reality, it's literally something that you're going to study and you're going to forget and you're never going to use it again. But here's the bright side of it. That is okay. And I know you're probably like, oh, gasp, Teacher Carley, you just said like me studying and forgetting English is okay. It is only okay because I know you probably need this certification for something in your life. You want to be certified. You want to be able to have passed these tests and you can put that on your resume. You can do whatever with it. So yeah, partake in it. Do it. Study your little heart out and learn all those random vocabulary words and do it. But do not get hung up on the fact that you can't remember those in the moment because we don't even know those. Don't be trying to use all those fancy vocabulary words around me. Nuh-uh, not today, baby. I don't know what you're talking about. And a lot of other native English speakers will look at you like, wow, I'm so impressed that you know that word, but let me Google that word really quick because I don't know what you're talking about. Those tests are so difficult and studying and memorizing them is just something that I think is a waste of time. And I know, again, double gasp. You guys are listening like, Carley, Teacher Carley's ruining my life right now telling me all this. I have mixed feelings. Before I had to study, this is just a little background story. When I was in Korea, I was trying to study for a test called TOPIK, which is the test of proficiency in Korean. It's the same thing. I was teaching TOEFL, teaching my students how to study for their TOEFL exams and they had to learn all these random vocabulary words. And I was like, why would we need to know this in a million years? But okay. And then I started studying for my TOPIK and I was like, why do I need to know these vocabulary words? Like, it's in every language. Like when I studied Korean and the proficiency, I would get like my listening skills down pat and I would switch over to grammar and I'm like, okay, I kind of got grammar down pat. And then I would try to learn the vocabulary and I'm like, why? Why do I need to know all these random vocabulary words? I'm never going to talk about this. I think one of them was like drywall, which is like what you use in your house when you're like, before you paint and like when you're building stuff. I don't need to know that. I don't work in construction. Like, I'm just like, why is this on the test? I get it. That's even like a simpler word. It's not even a fancy word. You might need to know it. But I'm just like, we need to teach people how to speak English like a native. We need to teach them slang. We need to teach them idioms. We need to teach them all the colloquialisms because that's native English. I promise you, 9 times out of 10, when a student asks me a question about English, it's because they didn't understand a joke, or they didn't understand an idiom, or they didn't understand some slang. They took it maybe literally and it didn't make sense. I always use the example raining cats and dogs, because if you take that literally, you would think people are crazy. Like, what are you talking about? There's no cats or dogs falling from the sky. But it just means that it's heavy raining outside. It's raining really hard. You know, the other day I gave this example in a podcast I did with teacher Tiffany on her channel. I don't know if it's going to be out yet or not, but I have a friend, her boyfriend is Indian. I met him for the first time and we were just gossiping, catching up, and she said something and I was like, oh, shut the front door. But the way I said it wasn't like that. I was like, oh, shut the front door. And I sounded irritated. Now, typically when you use this expression, you would say, oh, shut the front door. Like, it means, oh my goodness. But I was aggravated for her, the way that she was, the story that she was telling me. I was like kind of aggravated. So I was like, oh, shut the front door. Like, I cannot believe this. And the way I said it, I guess, I don't know, her boyfriend stood up and he started walking towards the door and he was like, oh, like, shut the front door. And I'm like, oh, no, honey. Like, that's not what I meant. And I had to explain the expression. And I'm like, you know, this just goes to show, like, native English speakers, we speak native English, and that isn't what you learn in those vocabulary books. And that's not what you'll ever learn studying for these tests. It's literally what you learn by surrounding yourself with other native English speakers, or watching TV shows, dramas, movies, listening to people like myself on YouTube that actually speak native English and teach native English, learning colloquialisms. That is what you need to know. I've said a lot, I spoke a lot about how passionate I am on these tests. I know they are necessary. I am intelligent enough to admit that these tests they have good intentions, the people who create them. And I know they are necessary for, if anything, just to show that you can understand English. But these tests will not make you fluent in English. They will not make you sound like a native English speaker. They will give you an endless vocabulary, whereas you will probably know more vocabulary words than your average native English speaker. But you will not be able to speak English like a native by studying these textbooks. You know, you have to get out there. You have to actually interact with other native English speakers, and you have to learn the language and adapt to how they speak. So the IELTS, the TOEFL, the TOEIC, all these tests like it are just designed to make you study and basically, you know, like I said, understand and know half of the dictionary. But then when you go to speak, you're still going to struggle, because in the real world, we speak differently. So I understand the importance of these tests, but please, please, please just realize that they are only a slight step in your journey. These tests are not something that you have to stress over. I mean, yeah, maybe if your company's telling you, hey, if you don't get a perfect score, you're fired. Yeah, I would be a little bit stressed. But if it's anything other than that, nothing, you don't have to worry. If it's only for you or for your language journey and you're so worried about it, I think you're putting your focus in the wrong area. Now, again, this is just IMO and Teacher Carley's opinion. All right. So feel free to take that how you will. A few tips real quick here, though, to overcome these things. I would just recommend practice. If you are adamant on trying to improve your vocabulary, which is a good thing. Now, I don't want you to misconstrue what I just said. I said all that because Americans are lazy and we like to speak simple. There we go. It's plain and simple. It's plain and true. We don't like fancy vocabulary that we have to look at and like, what does this mean? We have to interpret. No, we don't like that. We use that sometimes, but we prefer just to speak casually. However, we do know how to speak formally as well. We learn it in school and we can use it, and it's in our little back pocket for our emergencies or when we need to use it to speak formally or just to speak a little bit like more educated like. We know it. So you should still practice. However, that is the key word, practice. Practice makes progress. You're not going to learn this overnight. You are going to probably use the word happy 1,000,000 times before you start using the word ecstatic or overjoyed or whatever other synonym, because it's just practice. You're going to have to hear it from other people and you're going to have to remind yourself to use it. Practice makes progress. Another tip that I would always tell my students, and I still tell my students, is look at all those vocabulary words that you're studying for right now for these tests. And there's probably hundreds, if not thousands. And don't look at them as like, oh my gosh, these are 1,000 vocabulary words that I have to learn. Take them little by little. 1 a day, 2 a day, 3 a day, whatever, however many you're comfortable. And you make it a point to use those vocabulary words. Like, you will not go to bed that night until you have used those vocabulary words in your daily vocabulary that day. And you might be like, well, Teacher Carley, I don't speak English every day and I don't have people that I can talk to. Write a journal. Keep a journal. Talk about your day and use those vocabulary words. And you might also be like, well, I don't even know how to put this. Figure out a way. Figure out a way to apply it to yourself, to apply it to your personal life. Keep a journal. I'm an advocate for keeping a journal. I think everybody should journal. If you're on a language learning and a language journey, I think you should definitely keep a journal because 1, you can physically look back on your progress, but 2, it helps you apply your vocabulary and things that you learn into your real life. Just journal about your day. And if you really want to learn these new vocabulary words that you're studying, then make sure to put 1 or 2 or 3 of those words in your journal when you're writing. Or if you're in an area where you can speak to native English speakers or even friends that speak English or whatever, try to use them in your vocabulary during that day. It's not going to be a flip of a switch. It's not going to happen overnight, but just trust me. I promise you, you will improve. All right. I know I took about 30 minutes to answer this question. And I told my student that I was going to take about 30 minutes to answer because honestly, when he asked me this question, I was typing so fast because I'm very passionate about this. I have a love-hate relationship with these English tests. I can see their importance, but I also feel like they are so dumb because, yes, everything that I just said. So I was like, you know what? I have so much to say. I'm going to have to just record a podcast for you. And of course, it will benefit way more people than just him. So I was like, I'm going to record a podcast and respond to this because this is a very good question. And also, your teacher got a lot to say. I got a lot to say about it. I can't type this. This is going to take me 3 hours just to type. So thank you for asking that question. And I don't know if he's comfortable with me mentioning him here on my YouTube channel or his name or anything, but you know who you are. So thank you for asking that question. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I always push my students' questions to the forefront, unless I'm out of the country or maybe busy on a holiday or out of town, I make sure to pretty much stop what I'm doing and record for you guys if you have any questions or anything that you would like answered. So please do not hesitate to put your questions in the comments. I do enjoy answering your questions, and I do enjoy even myself being challenged by the questions that you guys may have. So if you like this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Like always, let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I hope to see you all in the next episode.